Hey everybody, so today I'm going to show you a tutorial on how I draw realistic galaxies. I'm also going to do a second video on how I draw realistic gas giant planets, and I'll also put a link to that in the description below and an annotation on the screen if you want to see that. So I'm using Photoshop, and as a former GIMP user, I can tell you that most, if not all of these techniques should transfer over to GIMP, but there are a few that might not. I'll point those out later. But anyway, here's how we start. First of all, you're going to want your screen, and you'll want to fill it with a color. I like to use dark blues and purples, but of course if it's your picture you can use whatever you want. So here's the dark blue that I chose. And for the sky, I like to use multiple colors, so I'm using the gradient tool right now with a linear gradient that goes to transparency right here. And first I will use black in the corner here, and to get a finer gradient, like not so sharp like that, I like to zoom out of the page rather far away and stretch it out really far. Actually, you know what? I think I want a darker blue than this. So I'm going to do that. Just go over here, drag it down a little bit, and then just paint bucket fill it, and then go back to your gradient, go back to black, scroll out, run the corner, that's still a little bit too much. There we go, that's better. And then on the opposite corner, I'm going to take a little bit of pink. I'm going to lower the opacity on this layer. Well, it's not really a layer, but you know what I mean. And drag it out this way. So now we have a nice little sky-like gradient. So now we get to the actual galaxy part. I'm going to make a new layer. So for this part, I highly recommend using a graphics tablet with pressure sensitivity, and go to your, and you'll also want to use a really nice cloud-like brush. This one down here is my favorite one. It's by Zummerfish. I'll put a link in the description to where you can download it. And I've actually changed the presets on it a little bit. Normally this brush has a color dynamics setting. Here's the original brush. It has color dynamics selected, and if you see, when I color with color dynamics, it takes away my color that I have, partly because the opacity is down. But it gives me some weird whites in there, and some weird different colors that I don't want in there, and that won't really look good in this picture. So that's why I went in and deselected color dynamics. So I'll go back to this one that I already have it nice and set up for me. And the first thing you want to do is lower the opacity and bring up the size of the brush a good bit, because I'm working at a 1080p drawing, which is 1920 by 1080 pixels. And a galaxy typically has two strands of, well, that's not quite big enough. Two strands of cloudiness, if that makes sense. So you just basically kind of wiggle it around slightly. And then, once you have your two basic strands there, lower down the opacity even more, and kinda use that to smooth it out a bit. And to smooth it out even more, a trick that I actually learned in my digital media class, you can actually use your ink dropper tool and select a mid-ground color in between your purple and your darker blue, something in between those two colors. And this is a technique that might not work in GIMP. In my experience with GIMP, for some reason it could only select the color that's in the layer that you're working on, while in Photoshop it'll select all the layers. So I think I got it to select from all the layers in GIMP once, but I never figured out how to do it again, so if that's possible, go ahead. So with this, just kinda color in between those two layers once you have your other one selected. And if you want to, you can bring up the opacity just a little bit. It'll make this come out a little bit clearer and you won't have to draw so many strokes. So next, a galaxy also typically has some really light patches and some really dark patches. So you want to take a little bit of white and lower the opacity quite a bit because you really don't want to overpower it. This looks fine. And just pick some spots where you want the clouds to be extra thick. And just kinda, I don't think I want that there. Yeah. Just make a few little bright spots. And then, like I said, there's usually some darker patches, so take some black, maybe lower the opacity a little more. And these dark patches are usually in between these two bands. Just like this. And just to give a little bit of variation in your sky, I like to add a little bit like that, just so it's not all one solid color and looks more like a painting. Okay, so the next step is to make little tiny stars. All galaxies are made up of millions and billions of little stars. So to do that, I've actually made my own brush. You can make it yourself by, first of all, taking one of these default brushes that has the hardness level all the way down to 0. And then you make the size really, really tiny. I made this 4 pixels. Then you go into your brush settings, your brush presets. And then the biggest, most important part is scattering, which is going to take your little dots and spread them way out. Bring it all the way up to like 1000%. Oh, and you want to do both axes because that'll make it a bit more varied and natural looking. And then spacing. This is an important part. Stretch it all the way out as far as it'll go. And yeah, that's basically it. You can mess with those settings all you want, but this is my preset that I've already made. So, all you gotta do is simply, first of all, make your opacity still pretty light, not all the way up, but low enough that that's one thing I need to do, is make it white, because stars aren't black. I mean, there could be black stars in some kind of weird scientific theory, but you know, not in this picture. And you just simply color them in. There's going to be a lot more in the brighter areas, obviously. And then for the darker areas, just lower the opacity some more. And then finally, you'll want to color in one or two brighter stars here and there. I like to use this brush These sparkly brushes are by Cashimus Prime. I'll put her link in the description as well so you can download those for yourself. And just put a few little bright stars, brighter than the rest of them, in these brighter areas of your galaxy. And then if you want a really brighter star, just bring up the opacity, bring up the size. And you don't want very many extremely bright stars, because that'll take away from the realism of it. I usually put maybe just one in there. So after you add all those little stars within your galaxy, you can go back to the same settings that you had with the smaller stars in there. Just add a few in the background, because even though there's a galaxy all the way around it full of stars, there's also going to be stars out in the vastness of space. So, just do a couple of those. And one little technique I found with these is that usually, me personally, when I draw a lot of these little stars, they tend to come out a little bit too even and too symmetrical. And I don't really like that. So what I do is I simply just take my eraser and erase a couple of them. Just a few in random spots. So there you have it. That is how I draw a realistic galaxy. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.